Good afternoon. It's a brand new month. It's the 1st of August, 1st of April 2025. This is the second episode of Market View this week. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Lungelele Makakola. Do watch us on our YouTube page, Eswatini TV. We are on DSTV as well, channel 286. Thank you for tuning in. Last year, December, the Central Bank of Eswatini launched the Eswatini Payments Switch Fast Payments module, enabling payments processing within 10 seconds rather than hours or days. This financial payment switch connects various banks and financial institutions, enabling the secure and seamless transfer of money and data between them. All local banks and financial service providers were expected to have fully transitioned to the highly anticipated payment switch platform by the 28th of February, which is last month. But how exactly does this platform work, and how can businesses leverage its full potential? Your questions will be answered today as business journalist Nelson Wendlangamandla sits down with the Central Bank's Deputy Director of Operations Payment Switch, Sabelo Gama, to unpack the details of this groundbreaking platform. And in our news today, the Eswatini Public Procurement Regulatory Agency is training different government departments and parastatals on compliance, auditing, and strategic procurement. The CEO, Vusi Matsebula, has all the details. Let's start the program with our first story. According to the Eswatini Public Procurement Regulatory Agency, procurement constitutes 12 to 14% of the gross domestic products for countries globally, including Eswatini. With a significant amount of the country's budget going to procurement, the agency is training different government departments and parastatals on compliance, auditing, and strategic procurement. The Chief Executive Officer, Vusi Matsebula, has details about the training.
We've invited all procuring entities who include the central government ministries, parastatals and local municipalities. So what we are looking at, we are trying to remind ourselves what are the procurement requirements for procuring entities. These will include your procurement plans, your quarterly reports and contract management reports. The reason why we are big on procurement compliance is because procurement plans help us with the suppliers to know that what are the procurements that procuring entities are going to be undertaking in the financial year. But also, as we go on with the reporting, we, as the regulator, we try and note what are the challenges that procuring entities have, as well as the suppliers. Because, for example, if we see that there are failed tenders, then it means we need to investigate further what is causing these failed tenders. But also, by the end of the year, we need to know how much money government, through the central government ministries, the procuring entities like parastatals and municipalities, how much money has government spent on public procurement, which would then assist us to do part of our duties as a regulator to advise government on policy. For example, on the national public procurement policy direction. For example, these days we are big on set-asides and preferential procurement for Eswatini companies that are owned by Swatis. So that is why we are here today, to try and ensure that we remind each other on compliance issues. The level of compliance is still very low, but what we notice that the procuring entities that are complying, they are complying very well. And those that are not complying, they are not complying at all. So we are trying to bridge that particular gap and try and make sure that we bring more of the procuring entities to comply. Currently, as the way the law is, there isn't much that we can do in terms of penalties. However, we always try and ensure that if you are going to be requesting for services from us, we make sure that you comply first. Also, currently, the Ministry of Finance is in the process of reviewing the Procurement Act. There are recommendations that in the Act we should include penalties for those entities that are not going to comply with the Act. We hope that is going to address the issue.
Entities that attended the training have expressed that it has come at a much-needed time as they are about to start new financial years where they are expected to procure different merchandise.
this training came at the right time, whereby we are starting a new financial year as public entities, and then it's going to help us align in terms of the procurement compliance regulations and everything that is required in terms of complying, and it will refresh us in terms of the reports as procuring entities that are being required by the agency when we are conducting our procurement. And
I think the most common challenge would be the issue of compliance. So a lot of our standard bidding documents that are being introduced by ESPPRA, we are being taken over them today. So we'll be able to take them back to our internal customers, where we're going to be and actually teach them how to draft their requirements and make sure that the actual product that we get at the end is as per the requirements that we actually wanted.
We are expected by law to do e-procurement planning 30 days after a budget approval, and also making sure that procurement reports are done on the 20th of day after end of each quarter.
The Ministry of Finance is implementing reforms in public procurement and finance management, including the modernization of the Public Procurement Act, expanding e-procurement, and implementing the Integrated Financial Management Information System, which is known as IFMIS, to enhance transparency and efficiency. For Market View, Nelson Langamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
Local companies still struggle to secure tenders. Noticing this and how it is blocking local businesses from participating in development projects, the Eswatini Public Procurement Regulatory Agency is coming up with a way to increase these businesses' participation in economic stability. The CEO, Vusi Matabula, shared this when we asked him on the success rate of local companies in winning tenders.
Local companies do get some of the tenders, but they also fail in other tenders. One of the reasons why they would be failing is because of exposure and expertise and price. Price, because in other instances, you'll find that the foreign companies are also manufacturers. So if you're a Swati company, you are still going to buy from them, you're going to be charged tax, and then you're going to sell at a profit, for a profit margin. So by the time, in that case, your price is not going to be competitive. But also there's the issue of exposure. You may find that we are not exposed to some of the goods and services that the procuring entities will be looking for. So you may find that there's actually no bid that is going to be received from a Swati company in that particular procurement. To try and ensure that Swati companies are getting awarded the tenders, we are continuously training suppliers. We are also engaging with the procuring entities to ensure that they conduct what we call suppliers' days, where they will tell the suppliers in terms of what their expectations are. Also, in addition to that, we are very strong on encouraging the submission of the procurement plans. Our intention going forward this year is that we are going to be advertising what procurements are going to be done by the different ministries and companies beforehand, so that as now it's April, suppliers should know that by July or August, I'm making an example, Eswatini Railways is going to be buying maybe 2 trains, so that they can then start to prepare themselves. Right now, what is happening is that you wake up one day and then you find that a particular procuring entity is looking for a particular goods or works or services. You cannot plan nicely ahead, say in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, that a particular procurement is going to be tendered for you to participate in that tender.
And that's it for our business news. Thank you for staying with us. After the break, we are joined by CBE's Deputy Director. We talk about the payment switch system by the Central Bank.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Welcome back. You're still watching Market View. Thank you for staying with us. We continue with the program. All local banks and financial service providers were expected to have fully transitioned to the highly anticipated Eswatini payment switch platform by the 28th of last month. Launched by the central bank just last year, this innovative platform enables real-time payments, allowing transactions to be completed in seconds between two parties. This promises unmatched convenience and effortless payment exchanges. But how exactly does this platform work, and how can businesses leverage its full potential? Your questions will be answered today as business journalist Nelson Lamandla sits down with the Central Bank's Deputy Director of Operations Payment Switch, Sabelo Gama, to unpack the details of this groundbreaking platform. Let's take a listen.
Welcome to Market View, Mr. Gama. It's a pleasure having you on the show. I came to Central Bank today because I want to find out about the progress of the Eswatini payment switch, which was launched late last year. But I want us to first start by explaining to the viewer at home, what is the Eswatini payment switch?
So good afternoon to Nelsiwe and the viewers. In terms of our Eswatini payment switch, the new infrastructure that we've deployed, it's trying to sort or help Eswatini with some historical problems we've had in payments, as well as it's a bit of a future-focused solution. Maybe to make it simple, I'll just pick three things that come to mind when you think what we are trying to change. So it's a payments platform and will deliver different things at different times. So the first thing is that note that Eswatini at present have friction relating to how quick money moves from one institution to another. So speed of transaction. So if I send money, it shouldn't matter what bank I'm in or mobile money service provider, Labo Hamba Mali. It shouldn't matter, do I have an account here or there? I should just be able to send the money from this side to that side instantly. So that's the first one, speed. And then I've touched a little bit on it. The second one is a convenience one. It's a bit of a big word, the interoperability, but to be simple, it says we have banks, we have mobile money service providers, as I've said, Bohamba Mali. We want you to be able to send money from an account at a bank to a Hamba Mali, whether it belongs to Imali, Instacash, or MTN, you should be able to send the money across. And then the third item that I think would be good to keep in mind is service availability. Right now, at times, you can't send money in the evening, you can't send money on weekends. So all of that we are putting to the side. Money can be sent at all times of days, on holidays, on weekends. So I think maybe that would be a good summary of the key points that viewers might think of with the EPS.
How much can be sent through this new system, Mr. Gama?
Okay, so you can send, of course, it's aligned with your own limits at your institution. So if you're at a wallet provider, there are limits that your Hamba Mali will provide, as well as your bank. But from an EPS point of view, the EPS will not process transactions above 50,000 emalangeni. So for wallets, the limits are a bit lower at about 10,000 emalangeni. But for wallets that have met certain requirements, then again the limit is the 50,000. It's a starting point because as people learn and consumers get more aware of digital products, we will then consider moves to increase the limits. But at present, it is 50,000.
This is such a good initiative, but I'm sure businesses would want to know how much Will they be charged? Will the charges be higher now? I'm sure that is what they are interested in.
So my charges, more or less, are quite similar to what you or the institutions. So I apply at Central Bank for pricing approval, as you're aware. So the pricing that they've offered on their other digital products. So internet banking, cell phone banking, and all of this. So this is then falling as it becomes part of that portfolio, which means from a pricing point of view, it's adopting the same pricing. So it's not increasing pricing in some areas. Of course, going forward, we will look to how best to then minimize the cost. But at present, it's not increasing them. It is coming in at similar pricing to current market offerings.
Fintech solutions often come with cyber threats, Mr. Gama, so I want to know, what is it that you have done in that regard to ensure that the consumer is safe as they use this platform?
Part of that is, of course, there are things that will be built into the systems, so on the technical side, just to protect the systems from vulnerabilities that may arise from cybercrime, etc. But I think the bigger one that you're touching on is there's the consumer that needs to be educated in how best to protect themselves. I think we've seen recently in the media about some of the fraud tricks that have been in our market. So again, it's more about being aware of what interaction with your bank would look like, what interaction or what are the common ways of interaction with your financial service provider, even if you have problems. So I'm touching a bit on a later discussion point, which is our roadshows. Part of what we are very strong on there is the consumer education about fraud, what to look out for, how to protect your key things like your PIN, how to know whether a message comes from your bank or someone is making it look like it's coming from your bank. So various things to educate the consumer to avoid them falling into some of these pitfalls or some of these fraud scams. So the roadshows began yesterday, 31st of March, and they'll be running for 2 weeks until the 14th of April. And the roadshows are really not only just the EPS or the Eswatini payment switch educating consumers. There's an education drive, but we also have all the financial service providers there with us. So the various banks and the mobile money service providers are there, which means you can interact with all of them in one place to understand some of the service offerings, understand what the EPS offers by each institution. And we also have our partners in ESCCOM who are also helping educate in data security, how to avoid fraud, and all of this. And of course, there's fun and games and giveaways and all of these just to make sure that the engagement is lively with Eswatini.
I want to know if all banks are now using the system, and if there are challenges, what are those challenges?
Okay, so it's important to note that the EPS is for both the banks and the non-banks. So in terms of that deadline, it applies to all, which is both banks and maybe mobile money service providers who have not met the deadline. So this is why we use the term participants, just to cover both sides, because we've made them come together as one. Not all of the participants have made the deadline, which was 28th of February 2025. So there are technical issues that they face with their some of their infrastructure in terms of how to integrate, because there's a level of technical integration between what the switch offers. You can think of it as you are establishing a way of communicating between their systems and the EPS. So some of these systems take a bit more time to get aligned with the standards that the switch is expecting. So these are part of the items causing the delays. But I think I'd maybe pause there. We have 2 institutions that have not made that deadline as at now, with the third going live expected this week. So that's why I've sort of not included them.
Are these two that you're mentioning that haven't switched, are they banks or maybe they are the mobile money and Imali platforms?
These two are banks that are not live on the EPS.
I want this to be clear to the consumer, to the end user of this system. Does it involve cross-border transactions? And if so, we saw the last time when the cross-border transactions was implemented for countries under CMA, there were challenges. Does this system involve cross-border transactions?
Thank you for bringing that one to the fore. And I missed a big point with relation to EPS and what it's offering. So the initial products that we're offering are domestic, being that the payments we are speaking to on EPS are payments within Eswatini. So this is what EPS is offering. And then to your point on the cross-border, which was a CMA matter, common monetary area between Eswatini, South Africa, Lesotho, and Namibia, where there was a shift in the way payments took place in that particular space. So that change occurred in September last year. There's been a lot of, I'd call it collaboration, because on cross-border, you have to work with the various countries and align their own institutions with how they'll process payments. So there's been a lot of collaboration, and we've seen quite a good uptick or improvement in the nature of issues that were there, and the way the banks respond to them. And the payments are processing more seamlessly than they were, I think, when we deployed. But we do have one or two final matters that we believe, after we've concluded across the various countries, will make it quite seamless and look quite similar to the way they used to process before, other than the additional information that's required. From a switch point of view, the issues, so the switch added a certain layer to bring out the issues that may be faced. We call it a pilot. So the participants that we feel are ready to offer products to consumers first test in a production environment to just see whether there are any issues that are unexpected. It's only after that has occurred that we then permit them to go to the market. So this is one way of minimizing issues, but there will be issues from a consumer side, just from people adjusting to that. If you're sending, say, to an Imali provider like Eswatini Mobile Imali, that you don't send to a bank account, you send to a wallet name. So sometimes you'll get mismatches of that form, where it's about just understanding the fact that this side is an account which has an account has an account number, a wallet has normally a mobile phone number, but at times you're finding consumers mixing it up, which means these are the sort of failures we have. So part of it is just getting acquainted with it, but not necessarily core system issues, but just awareness, which is why the roadshows are helping us just to engage and inform the consumers on how to interact with these platforms.
You are saying, Mr. Kama, this is a fast payment system that Eswatini will now send money even on weekends and holidays, and that you are going to ensure that you educate business people as well as all Eswatini on using the system. Siyethemba ukuthi Eswatini atawuqinisekisa ukuthi the information that you will give them is internalized, so that bangadikhanzi sebama victims abo cybercrime. Siyabonga kakhulu ukuthi ube nathi ehlelweni lamuhla.
Deputy Director Operations Sabelo Kamoth, business journalist Nelsiwe and Nhlagamali, just explaining how the payment switch exactly works. After the break, we're joined by Senator Zbia for today's financial market analysis. Don't go anywhere.
Give a little.
All right, welcome back. You're still tuned into Market View. This is the second episode this week. Thank you for staying with us. We're on our final segment of this program. We're joined by Sanele Sibiya for today's market analysis. Mrs. Sibiya, thank you for tuning in today. What's happening in our markets? Starting off with essential markets, the U.S. What's happening?
All right, thank you, Lulu, and thank you for having me. So what we're seeing in the markets is actually a calm before the storm as we are heading to April 2, where President Trump will be will be tabling his tariff policy, and the world is waiting to see how that global tariff policy is going to look like, because he is actually proposing a cut across a blanket tariff policy across the globe. So what we're seeing there is basically, those traders that are just looking at buying low so that they can sell high. So that's why you're seeing the S&P 500 on that increase and the Dow Jones Industrial Average on that increase. But because of the lackluster performance in your Teslas and NVIDIA, that's why we're seeing that Nasdaq coming down. And then moving into the European markets again, what we're seeing in Europe is European markets are actually just being held by those defense stocks, and the fact that we saw that inflation within the Eurozone is actually showing signs of going down, and that actually increases the options of a cut in the interest rate. So that's why we're seeing all those European stocks are playing upwards, with London at 8.6, Frankfurt at 22,000, and Paris at that 78,000. But Paris is not really performing very well these days because of a number of structural happenings there with the Marine Le Pen type of political story, so all of those are issues that are going to play into the markets. And then in Asia, again, the tariff fear is there. But what we are seeing is that improvement within the Chinese factory output, and that return in overall sentiment within the consumers and the producers within China. But we do expect that tomorrow that tariff talk, if President Trump really does go ahead with it, is actually going to hit hard on Asia. So again, this is another calm before the storm. When today we're just thinking of the movements today, we're going to see tomorrow what happens. That's the stance the markets are taking. Then in South Africa, what we're seeing is the South African Stock Exchange continues to increase because of those changes in gold. Gold is really making headway. So we're seeing the South African Stock Exchange at 89,000, and we are still awaiting, the budget to be passed. And it seems that if indeed it gets passed, it will pass without that VAT bill. So then the markets are actually loving that. So that's why we're seeing those gains. And then when you come to the local economy, there hasn't been any changes. And then when you look in the futures, your commodities, we see gold reaching an all-time high today, at that 3,100 range, which we've not seen that before per ounce. And then oil is actually taking somewhat of an upsurge. That's purely because, President Trump's threatening tariffs against all people that are buying Russian oil. And then the situation in the Middle East is really not that stable with, the bombardments around Tehran, and, that entire Israel and the Gaza war. So there's quite a lot with America threatening Tehran again on their nuclear program. So there's quite a lot of moving elements there affecting the price of oil. And then in terms of currencies, we're seeing relative weakness in the local currency against the dollar. And also there's a bit of weakness against the euro, and again another weakness against the Japanese yen. So the tariffs are likely to pull back entities into the US, and that's why we're seeing the dollar strengthening. And the issue with the budget in South Africa, again, that's sending jitters in the currency markets. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sibiya, for that analysis today. Well, there you have it. Today's market analysis by in-house economist Sanele Sibiya. It's 2:30. We've come to the end of our program. This was the second episode this week of Market View. Do join us again on Thursday at exactly 2 p.m. But do join us for Nedbank Business Watch tomorrow at 2 p.m. See you tomorrow.